Okay, so let's say you've got the flu, and the flu is a rather nasty thing to have, so there's nothing you want more in the world than to be not sick. And today in this video, we're going to have a bit of a look at all the things that your immune system does to clear an infection from your body, so that you get better, and in the future, you don't get reinfected. So the flu is a viral infection, which means that it's from a virus, and the flu is an antigen. So an antigen is anything that generates an immune response, and because the flu is a virus, it's foreign, your body generally doesn't like things that aren't part of itself, so the immune system will respond. The flu virus gets taken up by an antigen-presenting cell, such as a dendritic cell, and it will take your flu, the flu virus, through the lymphatic system to a lymph node. Okay, so what's a lymphatic system? Lymphatic system is actually a circulation in your body, and you might be very familiar with the cardiovascular circulation, which is your heart, the blood, the veins, the arteries, and all that other stuff. And you can feel it, at the pulse. You can see it in your hands, and in many other places. So everyone knows what that is. What you might not be as familiar with is the lymphatic system. So what happens in the cardiovascular system is blood accumulates in the capillaries, and that generates pressure on the side of the capillary wall, basically. And what happens then is fluid gets pushed into the tissue, and then fluid accumulates, and that can lead to swelling. And it's the role of the lymphatic system to clear that, to take the fluid that accumulates in your tissue and return it back to the cardiovascular system. And in people with heart failure, what happens is their heart can't pump out enough blood, so blood stays in their veins and stays in their capillaries, meaning that there's more blood in the capillaries, generating more pressure, allowing more fluid to leak into the tissue, more fluid than the lymphatic system can drain, and that can lead to sort of chronically swollen ankles, and you see that a lot in people with heart failure. Okay, so your flu virus gets taken by an antigen-presenting cell through the lymphatic system to a lymph node. What's a lymph node? A lymph node sort of acts as a filter for your lymphatic system, and it's part of the immune system. So all sorts of antigens will get taken up to lymph nodes so that the cells of your immune system can react. And there's two main types of cells inside your lymph node, B cells and T cells. And B cells are called B cells because they're made in the bone marrow. T cells are called T cells because they're made in the thymus. And collectively, these are known as lymphocytes. And they're part of your immune system. So your flu virus has been taken to your lymph node, and these B and T cells will respond. So you've got two types of T cells. You've got CD4 and CD8. CD4 T cells are known as helper T cells, and they coordinate the immune response. So they coordinate B cell responses. They coordinate CD8 responses. And when someone has HIV, the human immunodeficiency virus will infect CD4 T cells, which means that these CD4 T cells can't coordinate the immune response anymore, leading to all sorts of diseases and infections that you often wouldn't see in someone who wasn't immunocompromised, and eventually they will progress to AIDS if you don't treat it. CD8 T cells are known as cytotoxic T cells. So cyto means related to a cell, toxic is pretty self-explanatory, so they kill cells. Okay, so you will have in your lymph node CD4 T cells that are specific for this flu virus. So it will have a receptor that can bind to the flu virus. Once it's bound, it can differentiate. It will differentiate into a effector cell, or an effector cell, and a memory cell. Same thing here for CD8 T cells, so I'm just going to write E and M. Effector cells actually carry out the function of the particular cell. So an effector CD4 T cell coordinates the immune response. An effector CD8 T cell is cytotoxic. Okay, B cells can also respond. So B cells are also cells that have receptors that can bind to antigens, such as the flu virus. But it can't do much until a CD4 effector cell acts on it and activates it. And that's why CD4 T cells are helper cells. They help these B cells. So activation. So once it's bound and once it's been activated, a B cell can differentiate into a plasma cell, which generates antibody, and memory cells, which are the same thing as memory cells in T cells. What they do is they sit around and wait for you to be reinfected, and if you're ever reinfected, memory cells allow the immune system to respond very quickly to clear an infection. Okay, so you've got all these cells, and it's that's fantastic, but they can't actually do anything unless you've got a sufficient quantity, because you've got a lot of flu virus and a lot of flu-infected cells throughout your body, and right now, judged from this count, you've actually got 6 cells ready to respond. So that's not enough. The next stage is proliferation. So these cells will multiply and spread across your body, ready to combat the flu menace. Now, if you're malnourished or you otherwise haven't been eating enough, then you might not have enough energy for these plasma memory cells and effector cells to proliferate, and if that occurs, then you might be immunocompromised as well. Your immune system might not be working and you might be sick for longer than you have to be. Okay, so let's have a look at what these cells actually do to the flu virus. So, plasma cells pump out antibody, and antibody binds to the flu virus. So you've got the flu virus and antibody will bind. Then it can do one of two things. It can be a neutralizing antibody. So what neutralizing means is it binds and then it just stops the virus from doing anything. So if I give you a baby, you're holding onto that baby, you can't really do much because all your concentration is focused on the baby and not dropping the baby and keeping the baby alive. Well, it's similar to a flu virus or a neutralizing antibody. If a neutralizing antibody binds to the flu virus can't do anything else, so, it's been neutralized. It can't cause any more disease. The other type is a non-neutralizing antibody. So, what a non-neutralizing antibody does is it binds and it signals other cells to come and kill the flu virus. So this is where the baby analogy breaks down, and don't try to think in terms of babies anymore. A non-neutralizing antibody binds and signals another cell to come and kill the flu virus. Okay, you've also got the CD8 T cells. So what do CD8 T cells do? They are cytotoxic. So let's say you've got a virally infected cell. Here it's got the flu virus inside. What the CD8 T cell will do is kill it. Very simple. These are all, of course, controlled by CD4 T cells, because CD4 T cells coordinate the immune response. So what's basically happened is we have the flu virus, it gets taken up to a lymph node. Inside the lymph nodes, you've got B and T cells that can respond and differentiate into their effector cells. Once they differentiate into their effector cells, then they can proliferate and spread across the body and clear the virus or the infection from your body. Now, it doesn't always work like that. You can get things like hepatitis B and HIV that just lead to chronic infection because your immune system can't deal with it. But for most infections, this is what happens. Okay, so where do these memory B and T cells come into play then? Well, let's say it's a week later and you've cleared the flu and you're feeling much better. And you're with a friend and he's got the flu. And you're not very happy because you don't want to get the flu again. So let's look at what happens if that happens. Okay, so on the y-axis here I've got the antibody concentration, and on the x-axis I've got time. What happens when you get sick? This is time 0. You get sick, then your antibody concentration will rise. Antibody gets to a point where it's cleared of the virus and then it'll drop. If you ever get re-exposed to that particular virus or that particular antigen again in the future, what happens is your immune response will be able to pick up very quickly because of all the memory T cells that you have and memory B cells, and because you've still got plasma cells hanging around. So your antibody concentration or your antibody count will increase much faster and it will increase to a much higher level. This allows you to clear the infection and you might not even feel sick to begin with. So this is known as immunological memory, and the first bit, the bit where you get sick, is known as the primary immune response, and the second time when you get infected but don't get sick is the secondary immune response. Immunological memory. And we're going to apply that in the next video when we look at vaccination. So I will see you there.